one of the concerns I have is that the way the RAI guidelines are being developed, they're heavily in favour of the metropolitan cities and the large cities. And if we're talking about going to scale, RAI on paper says any city over 3 lakhs. If we get down to the medium and low level cities, we've got a capacity problem of the ULB, we've got a paucity of NGOs, and very few CBOs are organised. What are your views on this? My real concern is that there's a very real danger that a large proportion of the resources are going to get absorbed into the big cities. And yet again, as with unfortunately many other government programs, very little resources will actually get down to the medium and small level cities. But first of all, to go back to something which was the theme that ran through our 3 NGO presentations this morning, and that was community savings. This is something that, for me, is the glue and the building blocks that brings and keeps communities together. It is something that is totally absent in the RAI guidelines. And what I would like to propose is that all of you, as friends, we try to put pressure on the government to build in community savings into the RAI guidelines. There is a huge gap in the funding pattern of RAI. The centre is only going to put in 50%. 50% has got to come from somewhere else. Anticipations are the state government will put in money. Anticipations are the cities will put in money. But when I've been going around some of the cities are looking in their pockets and say, it is empty. And also, the community people are expected to make contributions. If they've not been saving, and they're suddenly asked to find 10 or 15,000 rupees, they will go to friends, they will go to relatives, and they will go to moneylenders. And they will end up even deeper in poverty than they are at the moment. So for me, savings needs to be an integral part of the RAI program. And if we can all let that be known in Delhi, that this is extremely important, this needs to be built into the guidelines. I think this is something that has come very clearly out of our presentations the first half of this morning, and I would just like to emphasize that. Participation, the word appears in many different parts of the RAI guidelines. It is also taken seriously or not so seriously. It is also interpreted in many different ways. And I'm often seeing that participation is seen as consultation. Something that was mentioned in passing I would like to emphasize, and that is the capacity of communities to be negotiators of land, to go and seek alternative land and to negotiate for that. This is something which is very important that comes out of the community mapping process. The communities are no longer sitting there waiting for government to give land. They can be active players in the land market and actively seeking what they consider to be suitable alternative sites. Secondly, that we can have a level of technology that brings us into city-level mapping, which is manageable in cities where the capacity is relatively low. Thirdly, that we need to take city-wide planning issues, density issues, housing issues into account when we're looking at our city-wide planning. And Pratima, I think, raised some important questions that we need to be taken on board and for which there are no easy and simple answers. In the third presentation and also perhaps in the other two, we've been able to see the assets in the community. Often our description of urban poor communities is only the negative things. What has come out are the human capital assets, the human resources, the financial resources of those communities, and how we can utilize and build on those strengths rather than doing the easy thing which often ends up in negatively destroying those. And for me and the team with which I work with, a lesson I think which has come across very clearly, we're involved in building up the capacity of cities. We need to look at the communities and the NGOs as resource persons in that capacity building process, and perhaps a little bit less at the more formal training institutes that cannot bring the field experience and the practical realities that we've heard today. For the excellent